As always, here we are in Blender, starting off with a cylinder, just extruding out the vertices on the very edge a couple times, just to make those extra loop cuts that you sort of see where I know I'm going to want to place the shoulders and the hips or the front and back legs in the future. Because if I don't have those extra loop cuts there, basically when I extrude out the legs in just a little bit, I always end up with these really blocky, extremely made of Legos kind of look legs, and I just find it helpful to make sure I have those extra loop cuts from the very beginning instead of adding them later. Just a quick tip. I think it's also interesting, so I actually modeled this elephant shrew. His name is Philip. I modeled him way earlier in the year, so it's interesting kind of looking back and seeing this modeling process, because there are just things that I can see right away that I would definitely do differently now. Like right now, if I modeled an elephant shrew now, I probably would definitely not have as many loop cuts in the body as you can see right now. I'm really curious if going forward, if I'm going to just kind of dissolve some of those edge loops, because they're not really all doing much for the actual shape of the body. And you know, when you're working with low poly, if you want to have as few loop cuts as possible, you really need to make sure that every loop cut you add, every edge loop, is actually doing something for the shape. Like there's a reason that it's there. It is making the shape go in or out, what have you. And I don't think that's really happening with a lot of the actual geometry on this model, which is fine. It's always super interesting to look back at an older modeling process like this. As you can see, my friend Elephant Shrew here, of course, has the iconic Elephant Shrew nose. I think there's 20 species of Elephant Shrew. All of them, of course, have this wonderful, long, sort of proboscis nose. That's basically where they got their name from, is having that very long nose, much like an elephant. But interestingly enough, elephant shrews actually aren't shrews at all. They're actually part of a specific tree branch of the mammal family tree called Aphrotheria. And it basically refers to mammals that are only found on the African continent, one of which is our wonderful friend Elephant Shrew. You can see I did go ahead and actually dissolve some of those edge loops. The one that I originally had right in the center of where the front legs are, that would have been going down the sides of the front legs. I went ahead and got rid of that. I'm curious to see, I'm not sure if I'll add it back later, but I dissolved some topology because I was like, oh, this is too many loop cuts, and then added like 1,000 cuts where the ears are now. That's okay. It's always a process. I think this model is already really cute just the way it is right now. And actually, if I had not done any of the texture painting that I ended up doing in the future, well, now I was gonna say he looks like a lot like any of the other elephant shrew species. He doesn't have ears, so now he doesn't look like anybody. Okay, there we go. I love these little mouse-like ears I gave him. I think they're really cute. I was saying there's about 20 different species of elephant shrew. They all have these long noses. They all use that long, flexible nose that they have to actually move leaf litter around on the ground in the forests where they live. And they use their nose, they flip leaves over, and they find insects. They eat beetles, ants, centipedes, other small insects and stuff like that. And they use their nose, flip leaves over, find the little bugs, and then they have a very long tongue. It was actually compared to an anteater's tongue, which I just love how many different animals the elephant shrew is actually compared to. But they have a really long tongue that they use to scoop the insects that they find right into their mouth to eat them. They all have this long tail too. One of the articles I read about elephant shrews, it described their tail as being scaly, like a possum's tail. I thought that was interesting because I guess it's like a possum's tail, but I think it's also just, you know, kind of like a rat's tail or a mouse tail, which doesn't seem super unusual or anything. You could see for a second there, I tried a couple different things with the actual feet. Oh god, it's so scary. The toes look so scary to me. I tried extruding out different little elephant shrew toes here, because they definitely do, like when you actually look at elephant shrews, a lot of them do have very pronounced long little fingers on the ends of their legs. And it's a kind of distinctive trait, so I tried to kind of represent that in the model, but again, as I always say, like there's a level of detail that it becomes frightening. It just looks scary, I don't know, and that was adding individual toes on a low poly elephant shrew was definitely a scary level of detail, so I just kind of went for a little rounded paw shape, sort of. You can see I'm extruding it out, scaling down, extruding out again, and it just looks like he's wearing little shoes, which I think is always a very cute approach to low detail little animal feet like these ones, so it all worked out perfectly. Base model is just about finished here. I always have to do lots of kind of fine tuning, especially on the ears. I find like a lot of the time I'll add a loop cut just like that I just did, and I think, yeah, I dissolved it too. A lot of the time I'll just kind of experiment with pulling the back edges or the inward facing edges of the ears toward each other to just kind of give the ears a little bit more of a sense of depth. Like right now, if you look at the 360, they just look, I don't know, they look so flat. And it's low poly, it's low detail, but they look so flat. Like right now, they look like, I don't know, they look like little ends of popsicle sticks. It's too much. Okay, so I scaled some of the nose in, added a little nose at the I scaled the nose in and added a nose at the end. Hello. I scaled the nose in and I just added a little bit of detail at the very end of the nose, because if you really look at elephant shrews, they do have just a little, I don't know, their nose goes way down and then it kind of flares back out again a little bit, which I imagine probably helps them when they're like flipping leaves over and stuff to find food. And we're at the step of UV unwrapping. Always wonderful, always. I think this is always the least interesting part of these time lapses, but I have some elephant shrew information to share with you while I do this wonderful UV unwrapping. So, as I was saying before, elephant shrews, like the name is misleading. They're not actually shrews at all, and they're certainly not elephants at all. So you might think, well, if they're not shrews, maybe there should be a different name for elephant shrews. You would love biologist Jonathan Kingdon. In 1997, he thought so too, and he actually did suggest the name Sengi, which is a Swahili term. I was curious about what the name meant, but I couldn't find like a direct translation anywhere. So in any case, Sengi is a wonderful name. But yeah, so the name Sengi was suggested for them since obviously the name elephant shrew is misleading about their actual lineage. And it was interesting. I read a research paper about elephant shrews, and it seemed like the two names were used pretty interchangeably, so I don't know if it just didn't completely stick or what, but I'll kind of go back and forth, I guess. I love Sengi. I think it's such a cute little name. One interesting thing that I read about Sengis was that they're described as solitary animals, but they also are known to live in monogamous pairs. And one of the things I read that I thought was so funny was they are monogamous, and they live in pairs, and the pair will live in a defined territory together, and they'll even defend that territory together, but they're solitary. And one article said that they just kind of don't particularly care for each other that much. Like, they pretty much are on their own, but are around each other pretty much solely for mating purposes, which I just thought was really funny. Okay, so I've gotten to the step of texture painting here, and you can see he has a very orange face, kind of a darker body, and a kind of a pale pinky tail and ears. So this is because the actual species of Sengi that I decided to model here is called a black and Rufous Sengi, which basically means it's just a name for their actual coloration. So of course black referring to their darker color past their head on their body, and then Rufous actually means an orangey kind of red color, which I was very excited to learn because there's a type of hummingbird called the Rufous hummingbird that lives near where I live, and they're so crazy. If you know hummingbirds, you know that they are very territorial. And there is one. Apparently the Rufous hummingbird is particularly insane, and we have one and he is, but I was excited to find out what the term Rufous meant, basically. Texture painting was super simple. You could see there, I kind of experimented with maybe using a gradient on the head area where he's more of a orangey red sort of color. An actual Black and Rufous Sengi, you'll see, does have, you know, definitely like a graded coloration going from kind of a lighter to darker. So I thought I would include that, but I have never, I don't know, to me, like at least with the way I texture my low poly models, the gradients, they never look right. I prefer just solid colors and keeping it pretty simple. Another funny thing that I read about Sengis was, so they're not particularly social. The pair will live together and they live in a defined territory. So usually their territory, it sounds way bigger than I would have thought. They usually live in a territory of about 1 to 1.7 hectares, which is about 107,000 to 183,000 square feet. And the first time I read this, I went completely insane because I thought that it said like 10,000 square miles. It did not. That's not how that conversion works. But when I tried to visualize how big this actual territory is, I learned that it's about the size of a city block in Manhattan on the low end, or quote, 1 3/5 times as big as the White House, which was such a specific figure. And I can't help but imagine an elephant shrew, you know, running the US. I think that would be really great. I really like that thought. And here, of course, I'm modeling a hat for the delightful elephant shrew because, I don't know, he just looked like such a proper little gentleman. I thought he really needed a little hat. I always follow a pretty basic approach for modeling hats like this. I think I just started with a cylinder here, scaling up along Z a couple times, scale in, extrude up, scale down on Z, and then I just kind of extruded down from the bottom and scaled that out along Y and in on X to make the kind of brim shape. Super simple, works every time. Have not evolved that technique at all in all of the time that I've been modeling. Something interesting I also read, I was curious about their conservation status, and I did read that according to the IUCN Red List, which is basically, they keep track of the conservation status of different species and stuff, whether they're endangered, threatened, vulnerable, or least concern, our favorite. It was interesting. So specifically the Black and Rufous elephant shrew, in the research paper that I read originally, that one said they were studying them because they are an endangered species, and the study was about determining the habitat requirements, more or less, of this specific species of Sengi. Endangered as of 2001, or when it was published in 2005, but when I went to the IUCN Red List, they are now listed as least concern. It does unfortunately say that their population is declining due to habitat loss and hunting activities where they live, but the good news is that they are least concern, so it's always nice to see that things have kind of improved for an animal like that. And here is the final 360 of beloved Black and Rufous elephant shrew. And a quick idle animation because why not? Also, as you can see, I'm a talking moth right now. This is a VTuber that I'm working on right now that I'll hopefully have finished pretty soon to make a video about for y'all, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!